You're not half the woman my mother is. The words from my daughter-in-law, Clara, sliced through the air that evening as I served the dessert I had made with so much love. A profound, chilling silence fell over the dining room. My heart pounded in my chest. Without thinking, I pushed my chair back and replied, "Then she can start paying your rent." My son, Daniel, went completely pale. "Rent? What rent?" he yelled, his eyes wide with disbelief. At that exact moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. And this one revelation was just the beginning of a story that no one, especially not them, ever saw coming. My name is Rose. I am 70 years old. And on that fateful night, I discovered that a mother's unconditional love could become her greatest, most painful weakness. For 6 long months, I had been secretly paying the $800 monthly rent for the apartment where Daniel and Clara lived. I believed it was my duty, my responsibility, to help my son through his financial struggles. I never imagined that while I was sacrificing my life savings, they saw me as nothing more than a burden, as someone inferior they could humiliate without any consequence. It had all started 6 months earlier, when Daniel came to my house, his eyes filled with tears, explaining that he had lost his job and that they couldn't afford their rent. "Mom, it will only be for a few months, just until I find something else," he had said, with that broken, pleading voice that always managed to disarm me. Like any mother who loves her child more than her own life, I didn't hesitate for a single second. I dipped into my savings, the money I had saved penny by penny over the years, working as a librarian, and I started paying their rent without Clara's knowledge. "It's our secret, Mom," Daniel had pleaded. "I don't want Clara to feel bad about having to depend on you." How naive I was to believe that he was simply protecting his wife's pride when, in reality, he was protecting his own fragile image as a provider. While I was counting every single dollar to help them, they lived as if nothing had ever changed, going out to fancy dinners, buying new clothes, and planning extravagant vacations that I knew they couldn't possibly afford. The dinner that night had been special. I had spent the entire day cooking his favorite meal: roasted chicken with mushroom sauce, rice with fresh vegetables, and that creamy vanilla pudding he had loved so much since he was a little boy. The table was set perfectly, with the crystal glasses I had inherited from my own mother and the silver cutlery I only used on the most special of occasions. Clara arrived in an elegant black dress and a pair of shoes that probably cost more than my entire monthly grocery bill. From the very moment they walked in, I noticed a different, colder vibe in the air. Clara had that forced, tight smile I knew so well, the one she always used when she was about to do something unpleasant. Daniel seemed nervous, avoiding my gaze and constantly fidgeting with his phone. During dinner, the conversation was tense. Clara criticized everything: the temperature of the food, the decor of my home, even the scent of the air freshener I used in the living room. "Rose, don't you think it's time you freshen this place up a bit?" she had commented, with that condescending, superior tone that so greatly annoyed me. "My mother's house is so much more modern. She has all of those trendy, minimalist pieces." I just smiled, trying my best to maintain a sense of harmony. But inside, I felt my irritation mounting. I had lived in that house for 30 years. Every single object held a precious memory. Every corner told a story. When it was time for dessert, I thought we could finally enjoy a pleasant, happy moment. I had made the vanilla pudding with such care, remembering how Daniel used to devour it as a little child, telling me that I was the best cook in the entire world. But instead of gratitude, I received those 4 words that pierced my soul like a handful of thorns. "You're not half the woman my mother is." The impact of those words was like a physical slap across my face. I froze, the pudding spoon suspended in midair, feeling a lump of raw emotion swell in my throat. Clara looked at me with a cruel, satisfied smile, as if she had been waiting all night for the perfect moment to hurt me. Daniel simply lowered his head, avoiding my eyes, and in that one instant, I knew that he had been in on his wife's cruel plan all along. "Excuse me?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling, even though I knew I had heard her perfectly. Clara leaned back in her chair with a false, theatrical elegance, as if she were the owner of my house, and repeated the words with even greater cruelty. "You heard me, Rose. My mother is a successful, independent woman who has built her own empire. She has never needed anyone. She has her own company, her beautiful beach house in Florida, her trips to Europe. Well, you just know how to cook and sew." Every word was like a hammer blow to my heart. I thought of all the years I had worked, from 5 in the morning until 11 at night, sewing dresses for sweet 16 parties, altering suits for nervous grooms, embroidering tablecloths for other people's weddings, while I had never even had the chance to plan my own. I remembered the sleepless nights when Daniel was small and had a fever, how I had sold my few pieces of jewelry to pay for his college tuition, and how I had worked double shifts so that he could have everything he ever needed. "Clara, please," Daniel muttered weakly, without having the strength to truly defend me. And those two little words were even worse than his silence, because they confirmed that he agreed with his wife, that he had been a part of this planned, calculated humiliation all along. My son, the same little boy who had once told me that I was his hero, was now allowing me to be treated like a servant in my own home. "No, Daniel, let me finish," Clara continued, in that high-pitched, affected voice she used when she wanted to sound superior. "Your mother needs to hear the truth. My mother would never have allowed her own son to live in this kind of mediocrity." She made a dismissive, contemptuous gesture, pointing at my dining room, where so many beautiful, cherished memories were held. "She would have helped us to get something better. She wouldn't have kept us trapped in this poverty with her false kindness." It was at that exact moment that something inside of me finally snapped. It wasn't just the sheer injustice of her words, but the absolute, stunning ingratitude of someone who had been living off of my generosity without even knowing it. For 6 long months, I had been the one who was paying for the very roof over their arrogant heads. I had deprived myself of my own medicine for my arthritis just to ensure that they had a comfortable place to live. I rose slowly from my chair, feeling a rush of adrenaline I hadn't felt in years. "All right, Clara," I said, with a calm that surprised even me. "If your mother is so superior, if she is such a better woman than me, then I think it is high time for her to assume the responsibilities that a successful woman like her should have." Daniel looked at me, completely confused, but Clara kept that smug, self-satisfied smile on her face, as if she had just won a great battle. "Exactly, Rose. I am so glad that you finally understand your place in this family." "Oh, I understand my place perfectly," I replied, my voice growing firmer and colder with each word. "And my place no longer includes paying the $900 a month rent for your apartment at 420 Hamilton Street, Unit 3. The silence that followed was so deep that I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. Daniel stood up so abruptly that he knocked over his water glass. "What rent?" he yelled, his eyes wide, looking at me as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Clara's arrogant smile had completely vanished. Now, she was looking at me with a mixture of terror and utter confusion that gave me an immense, profound satisfaction. "The rent that I have been religiously paying every single month since February," I continued, savoring every second of their complete and utter bewilderment. $900 that comes directly from my bank account on the 5th of every month, plus the $100 in additional fees that the landlord charges for a direct deposit. $1,000 in total that I pay so that you two can live comfortably while you sit here and disrespect me. Daniel collapsed back into his chair as if his legs could no longer hold him up. But, but you told me that you had talked to the landlord, that he was giving you time to get the money, he stammered, his voice completely broken. Clara looked at him with a fury I had never seen from her before, as if he were the one to blame for ruining her moment of glory. I lied, I admitted, without a single hint of remorse. I lied because I thought I was helping my son. I thought it was only temporary. I thought that you would appreciate the sacrifice someday. But now I see that to you, I am just a silly old woman who deserves to be humiliated. Clara tried to regain her composure, but her voice had lost all of its arrogant confidence. Rose, I didn't know. Daniel never told me that you were the one who was paying. She began to stutter, but I interrupted her, raising my hand. I am not interested in your excuses, my dear. If your mother is as wonderful and superior as you say she is, I am sure she will be more than happy to take on this responsibility. After all, a woman so successful and independent would not have any problem paying for her daughter and son-in-law's rent, would she? The irony in my voice was so evident that even Daniel flinched. The atmosphere in the dining room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Clara was glancing back and forth between Daniel and me, as if she were quickly trying to calculate all the implications of what she had just discovered. Daniel's hands were trembling, and he had started to sweat. Mom, why didn't you tell me the truth? He finally asked, his voice cracking. Why did you make me believe that you had worked something out with the landlord? Daniel's question echoed in the dining room like a painful, lingering ghost. I lied because you are my son, Daniel. Because when you came to my house, crying, telling me that you had lost everything and that you didn't even have money for food, I couldn't just stand by and watch the little boy I had raised, the man I love more than my own life, suffer. Clara remained silent, but I could see her mind racing, trying to process all the implications of my revelation. The pink color from her expensive makeup had completely drained from her cheeks, and she now looked ashen. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he had made since he was a little child, whenever he was nervous or scared. I lied, I continued, my voice growing firmer, because I thought it was only temporary. Because I believed that when you recovered financially and found a stable job, you would thank me for it. I never, ever imagined that while I was depriving myself of my own medicine for my arthritis, while I had stopped buying meat just to save those $900 a month, you two were plotting how to humiliate me in my own home. Daniel tried to interrupt me, but I raised my hand to silence him. No, now you are going to listen to me, Daniel. For 6 months, I have been eating nothing but rice and eggs for dinner. I have been wearing the same old pair of broken shoes because I didn't have the money to buy new ones. Do you know what I did last week? I sold your father's wedding ring. That little ring that I had kept as my most prized and precious treasure, just to be able to pay your rent and to have some food in my own fridge. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of pure rage, not of sadness. I sold the only physical memory I had left of my husband, of the man who had loved me for 30 long years, just to be able to support a couple who considered me to be inferior, mediocre, and completely unworthy of their respect. Clara finally found her voice, though it was now small and shaky. Rose, I didn't know. Daniel never told me that you were the one who was paying. But I cut her off with a look that could have melted steel. Of course, you didn't know, my dear. Because your husband chose to lie to you, too. He preferred for you to believe that he had earned the money on his own, rather than to admit that he was completely depending on his mediocre mother. I spat out the word mediocre with such venom that Clara visibly recoiled. Daniel finally exploded. Mom, I never wanted it to be this way. You were the one who insisted. I didn't ask you to sacrifice so much. His voice sounded desperate, like a little child caught in a lie. But his words only fueled my fury. I insisted? I yelled, finally losing all of my composure. You came to my house, sobbing like a 5-year-old. You told me that you couldn't even afford to buy a loaf of bread, that Clara was crying every single night from the shame of not being able to pay the bills. What kind of a mother would I have been if I had simply closed my door on you? The silence that followed was devastating. Daniel looked at Clara with a look of pure reproach that she returned with an equal intensity. It was clear that there were many secrets and many lies on both sides, and that neither of them had ever been completely honest with the other. Do you know what hurts the most, Daniel? I continued, feeling the hot tears streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. It is not the money. It is not the sacrifice. It is that for all of these months, every single time you came to visit, I saw nothing but contempt in your eyes. Clara would criticize my house, my food, my clothes, my very way of being, all while not even knowing that it was my money that was paying for the roof over her head. And you just let her do it. Daniel tried to approach me, but I took a step back. Mom, please, just let me explain. There is nothing left to explain. I cut him off sharply. The explanation has just been made. Your wife believes that I am not half the woman that her mother is. Well, then, her mother can finally show what kind of a woman she is by taking care of her own responsibilities. Clara stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair in the process. That is enough. I am not going to stand here and listen to this sermon. Daniel, we are leaving right now. Her voice had regained some of her usual arrogance, but I could see the sheer panic in her eyes. No, Daniel said firmly, surprising us both. We are not leaving until we have sorted this out. Mom, please, sit down. We need to talk like adults. But I had already made my decision. There is nothing left to talk about, Daniel. The cards are on the table. Your wife has made her feelings about me very clear, and you have shown that you completely agree with her. Starting from tomorrow, I will no longer be paying your rent. If Clara's mother is as superior and wonderful as she says she is, I am absolutely sure that she will find a way to help you. But Mom, you can't do that, Daniel cried out. And for the first time all night, I saw real, genuine terror in his eyes. We don't have the money. I was fired 2 weeks ago. I was going to tell you after dinner. Daniel's words hit the dining room like a bomb. You were fired 2 weeks ago? I repeated slowly, a new fresh wave of betrayal washing over me. And you didn't tell me anything. You allowed your own wife to humiliate me, knowing that you were completely and utterly dependent on me. My voice broke on the last word, not from sadness, but from a rage so profound that my hands were shaking. Clara turned to Daniel, her eyes blazing with a newfound fury. What? You were fired 2 weeks ago, and you didn't tell me? I have been spending money as if everything were completely normal, while you... She couldn't finish the sentence. She put her hands over her face and began to sob, dramatically, like an actress in a soap opera. Clara, please, just let me explain, Daniel began, but she cut him off with a gasp. Don't tell me to calm down. Just yesterday, I bought those $400 shoes. Last week, I booked the spa for my birthday. Daniel, we are completely broke, and you just let me spend money like an absolute idiot. Her tears had completely ruined her perfect makeup, and now she looked exactly like what she really was, a desperate and terrified woman. I watched the surreal scene unfold, feeling a strange mixture of both satisfaction and deep pain. For months, I had been the one carrying the entire weight of supporting this couple, and now they were finally being forced to face the harsh reality of their own situation. Daniel looked completely defeated, his shoulders slumped and his face buried in his hands. "Do you know what is the most pathetic part of all of this, Daniel?" I said, with a calm that surprised even me. "Even now, after discovering that you have been lying to me and humiliating me, my very first instinct is to ask if you need any help. That is what a mother does, son. That is what unconditional love does." Daniel looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to run to me whenever he had nightmares. "Mom, I, I lost my job because I was late 3 times in a row. Clara had been sick, and I had to take her to the doctor." And Clara cut him off with a murderous look. "I was not sick. I had appointments with my dermatologist for my beauty treatments. Don't you dare use me as an excuse for your own irresponsibility." The mask had fallen completely. The elegant, superior woman who had arrived at my house had completely disappeared, revealing someone who was vulgar and utterly desperate. "Beauty treatments?" I asked, in complete disbelief. "Are you telling me that my son lost his job because he had to take you to your beauty treatments while I was selling my own jewelry to pay for the roof over your head?" A laugh so bitter that it even scared me escaped from my throat. Daniel approached me, his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. "Mom, please, I know that I have made mistakes. I know that I have failed you. But you cannot abandon us now. We have nowhere else to go. Clara's parents are in Europe." And Clara interrupted him again. "My parents are not in Europe. They are right here in town. You told me to tell you that we were fine so that they would not worry." One lie after another was being peeled back, like the layers of a rotten onion. And how many jobs have you lost, Daniel?" I asked, in a voice so low I could barely hear it. "How many times have you lied to me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel couldn't look me in the eyes, and Clara had started to sob again. But this time, her sobs were more genuine, as if she had finally, truly understood the sheer magnitude of their situation. "3 jobs in the last 2 years, Daniel finally admitted, his voice completely broken. "I always found excuses. I always told you that it was temporary, that the companies were downsizing." He paused and looked up at me with those eyes that were once my entire world. "Mom, I have a problem. I think I have a real problem." For the first time, all night, I felt something that resembled compassion. My son was not just a liar. He was someone who clearly needed professional help. But compassion did not erase the betrayal. It did not heal the wounds that his words and his wife's words had opened in my heart. "Daniel," I said slowly, "admitting that you have a problem is the first step, but I cannot keep being your safety net while you do nothing to change. I cannot keep sacrificing my own well-being just to maintain a life that is completely based on lies." Clara stood up abruptly, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her elegant red dress. "This is ridiculous, Rose. You are his mother. Mothers do not abandon their children. My own mother would never do this to me." The arrogance had returned to her voice like a defensive armor. "Your mother has never had to deal with this because you have never told her the truth about your situation," I replied with an icy calm. "And you are right about one thing, Clara. Mothers do not abandon their children. But I am not abandoning my son. I am simply stopping him from using me." Daniel approached me and took my hands in his. They were cold and trembling. "Mom, I promise I am going to change. I am going to get help. I am going to find a job. I am going to make things right this time. Just give me one more chance." I looked at those hands, once so small that I had held them when he was first learning to walk, when he was afraid of the dark, when he needed comfort after a nightmare. Daniel, how many last chances have I already given you? How many times have you made me this very same promise? He couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I had completely lost count of the number of times we had had this exact same conversation, of all the broken promises and all the crushed hopes. Your lease is up next month, I announced, gently pulling my hands away from his. You have 30 days to find a solution. After that, I will no longer be responsible for your housing. Clara stormed toward the door. Let's go, Daniel. I am not staying here to be humiliated by a woman who does not understand what family even means. But Daniel didn't move. Clara, you can go if you want. I need to talk to my mother. His voice had a firmness that I hadn't heard from him in years. And for a moment, just for a single moment, I saw a glimmer of the man he could have been. Clara stopped dead in her tracks when she heard Daniel's words. She turned around slowly, her expression a mixture of sheer disbelief and pure, unadulterated fury. You are asking me to leave after everything that I have sacrificed for this marriage? Her voice had become shrill, almost hysterical, and she was gesticulating with her hands as if she were conducting an invisible, chaotic orchestra. Clara, please. I just need to sort this out with my mom. Too much has happened tonight. Daniel tried to explain, but she cut him off with a gasp that probably woke up the entire neighborhood. No, I am not going anywhere. If you are going to grovel like a dog in front of your mother, you are going to do it with me right here. She crossed her arms and planted herself firmly in the center of my dining room, like a stubborn, unmoving statue. Besides, this conversation affects me directly. If she stops paying our rent, where are we going to live? In a homeless shelter? I watched the surreal scene with a mixture of both fascination and deep horror. In a single night, I had seen the perfect, polished facade this couple had built completely crumble, revealing all the lies they had been weaving for so many months. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, terrible, but completely impossible to look away from. Clara, I said finally, I think you have said quite enough for one night. You have made it very clear what you think of me, and I have been equally clear about what I think of the two of you. There is not much more to discuss. Yes, there is much more to discuss, she shrieked, her face as red as her dress. You cannot just ruin our lives because you were offended by a simple comment. Families forgive. Families support each other. The sheer hypocrisy of her words struck me like a physical slap. Families support each other? I repeated slowly. Do you mean the way you have supported me tonight? Or the way that Daniel has supported me by lying about his employment? Or perhaps you mean the way you have both supported me by letting me sacrifice my own savings while you live as if nothing is wrong? Daniel sat down heavily in one of the dining room chairs, his head buried in his hands. Mom, I know that we have made terrible mistakes. I know that we have hurt you in unforgivable ways. But if you turn your back on us now, we will literally have nowhere else to go. That is not my problem, I replied, the words coming out with a harshness that surprised even myself. For 70 years, I have been the one taking care of others. I took care of my own parents until they passed away. I took care of your father through his long illness. I have taken care of you since the very day you were born. Do you know when was the last time that someone actually took care of me? When was the last time that someone worried about my well-being? The silence that followed was deep and so very painful. Daniel lifted his head and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face since he was a little boy. That familiar mixture of guilt and dawning understanding that would appear whenever he finally realized that he had done something very, very wrong. Never, he admitted in a barely audible voice. I have never worried about taking care of you. I always just assumed that you would be there, that you would always be fine, that you would always have the strength to solve all of our problems. Clara seemed to be losing all of her patience with this emotional conversation. Enough of all this melodrama, Rose. You are his mother. It is your responsibility to help your own son. You can't just decide that you don't want to be a mother anymore. Those were the final words, the final straw. I walked toward Clara until I was just inches from her face. And when I spoke, my voice was so low and so menacing that she instinctively recoiled. Never, ever tell me what kind of a mother I should be. I have been a mother for 35 long years. I have sacrificed my youth, my dreams, my opportunities, my money, my health, everything for my son. And what have you ever sacrificed? Your beauty treatments? Your $400 shoes? Clara tried to respond, but I continued without even giving her a chance. Being a mother does not mean being a permanent ATM. Being a mother does not mean accepting endless humiliation and disrespect. Being a mother means teaching your children to be responsible, independent, and respectful people. And in that, I have clearly failed. Daniel stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair in the process. Don't say that. You have been a wonderful mother. I am the one who has failed. I am the one who has messed everything up. Yes, Daniel, you have failed. But I have also failed by letting it go on this far, by letting you turn into a man who lies to his own wife, who lies to his own mother, who allows the very woman who raised him to be humiliated. Tears were now streaming down my cheeks, but my voice remained firm. Clara had started to pace the dining room like a caged, frantic animal. This is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare. In-laws are supposed to help their daughters-in-law. We are supposed to be a family. Family. I interrupted her with a bitter, harsh laugh. When have you ever treated me like I was family, Clara? When have you ever shown me even an ounce of respect, affection, or simple consideration? From the very day you met Daniel, you have treated me like I was an obstacle, something annoying that you had to tolerate just to keep your husband happy. That is not true, she protested, but her voice lacked any real conviction. It is not true? I asked, crossing my arms. Do you remember last Christmas when you suggested that it would be better for you two to spend the holidays alone because I didn't understand modern traditions? Do you remember when I offered to cook for your anniversary and you said that you would prefer something more sophisticated? Do you remember when you criticized me for wearing my favorite purple dress because women my age should wear more subtle colors? Each example I gave was like a small, sharp stab, and I could see Daniel flinch with every single memory. He had been there on all of those occasions. He had heard every hurtful, cutting comment, and he had never once said a single word in my defense. Clara, I continued, you never wanted to be a part of this family. You wanted this family to simply disappear so that you could have Daniel all to yourself. Well, congratulations. It looks like you are finally going to get exactly what you wanted. Daniel approached me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, please. And if that is what you want, Rose, then fine. But don't you dare come crying to me when you realize that you have lost your only son forever. When you are all alone in this old, dusty house, surrounded by all of your musty memories, remembering that you once had a family and that you kicked them out, all for your stupid, selfish pride. Her words were designed to wound me, to make me feel guilty, to completely break my resolve. And for a moment, they almost worked. The image of being completely alone in this house, without any visits, without any phone calls, without anyone who ever needed me, was absolutely terrifying. Clara's words echoed in the dining room like a curse, aimed directly at my greatest, deepest fear, loneliness. For a moment, The picture she had just painted took a firm hold of my mind. I saw myself in this empty house, without the laughter of grandchildren who would never come, without any Sunday phone calls, without anyone to even remember my birthday. The silence between us was sticky and heavy, and I could feel Daniel watching me, just waiting for my resolve to finally break. But then, something extraordinary happened. Instead of feeling a wave of panic or despair, I felt a deep and liberating calm wash over me. "You know what, Clara?" I said slowly, savoring each and every word. "I would rather be alone and at peace than to be accompanied and constantly humiliated. I prefer my musty memories of a happy marriage and years of honest, hard work to living a life of new memories that are built on nothing but lies and a complete lack of respect." Clara blinked a few times, as if she hadn't expected that response at all. Daniel's mouth fell open. He was slowly processing the fact that his last, desperate, emotional blackmail card had completely and utterly failed. "Besides," I continued, feeling a new energy coursing through my veins, "I am not going to be as alone as you might think. Just yesterday, I received a phone call that changed everything. But you two were so busy plotting how to humiliate me tonight that I never even got the chance to tell you about it," Michael called. The name landed in the dining room like a nuclear bomb. Daniel froze, and for the first time all night, Clara was completely and utterly speechless. Michael had been my boyfriend back in college, the man I had once planned to marry before I met Daniel's father. He was an ambitious, intelligent man who had decided to move to America to seek out better opportunities back when I had chosen to stay behind and start a family. "Michael?" Daniel murmured, his voice trembling. "The Michael from all the old photos? Your college boyfriend?" I nodded slowly, enjoying the expression of utter shock on both of their faces. "The one and only." It turns out that after 40 years of building a successful engineering company in Seattle, after raising 3 successful children and losing his own wife 2 years ago, he decided to look up some of his old friends. He found me on social media, and we have been talking on the phone for the past 2 weeks. Clara finally found her voice, though it sounded strangled. "What do you mean, you've been talking?" Her face had turned a sickly, greenish color that didn't suit her at all. "I mean exactly that. We have been talking every single day, reminiscing about the old times, catching up on our lives, all of our fulfilled and unfulfilled dreams. And last night, he made me an offer that took my breath away." Daniel approached me with hesitant, uncertain steps. "What kind of an offer, Mom?" I smiled, for the first time all night, a genuine, happy smile that came from the very depths of my heart. "He has invited me to spend a month at his home in Seattle. He says he wants to show me the state of Washington, to introduce me to his children, and that he has always wondered what would have happened if—" I let the sentence hang in the air, enjoying the absolute pin-drop silence that had taken over the entire dining room. "But Mom," Daniel stammered, "you can't just go with a man you haven't seen in 40 years. What if he's a scammer? What if he's lying to you? What if, Daniel?" I interrupted him with a newfound firmness. "What if he turns out to be a liar, just like you? What if he just uses me, just like you have? At least with Michael, I will be on an adventure, seeing new places and being valued for who I am, not for what I can give financially." Clara had collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands. "This can't be happening. This is a nightmare. You can't be serious about leaving with some stranger." "Michael is not a stranger to me. He knows my dreams, my fears, my hopes, because we shared them when we were young. He knows that I have always wanted to travel, that I have always wanted to see the Pacific Ocean, that I have always dreamed of writing a book about my experiences as a librarian. Do you know what was the very first thing he said to me when he called? He said, "Rose, I hope you have chased all of your dreams because you deserve to have an extraordinary life." Tears began to stream down my cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy, not of sadness. When was the last time that either of you ever asked me about my dreams? When was the last time that you cared if I was happy, if I had any plans, if there was anything at all that I wanted to do with my own life? Daniel tried to approach me, but I raised my hand to stop him. Michael has sent me photos of his house, of his beautiful garden that is full of orange and yellow flowers, of the incredible ocean view from his deck. He has told me about his trips to Europe, about all the books he has read, about the wonderful dinners he cooks for his friends every Friday. And do you know what else he told me? Clara lifted her head to look at me, her eyes red and filled with a deep resentment. What did he tell you? He told me that a woman of my age, and with my experience, is an absolute treasure. He said that I have stories to tell, wisdom to share, and so much love to give. He told me that any man would be lucky to have my company, my conversation, my affection. My voice broke slightly as I remembered those words, words that had healed wounds I didn't even know I had. After I hung up that call, I sat in my kitchen and I cried for an entire hour. But I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying from a profound sense of relief. I cried because someone had finally reminded me that I am more than just a mother, more than just a provider, more than just a free maid. I am a woman with my own value. Daniel had gone completely ashen. Mom, please, don't make any hasty decisions because of what happened here tonight. Michael might just be telling you what you want to hear. Scammers are very, very clever. Stop it! I yelled, with a force that surprised even me. Stop trying to control my life. Stop telling me what I can or cannot do. For 35 years, I have lived for you. I have made every single decision in my life, thinking about your well-being, your future, your happiness. For the first time in all these decades, I am going to make a decision, thinking only about myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel had collapsed back into his chair, his head in his hands, and was now sobbing like a small child. Clara was looking at me with a mixture of both hatred and absolute terror, as if she had just seen a ghost. Do you know what else Michael told me? I continued, feeling my confidence grow with every single word. He said that he had kept a photograph of me from when we were 20, the one where I am wearing that white dress with the little red flowers that I had made myself. He told me that all of these years, especially after his wife had passed away, he would look at that photograph and wonder if I had been happy, if I had ever managed to fulfill any of my dreams. Daniel looked up, his eyes swollen from all of his crying, and what did you tell him? I told him the truth. I told him that I had had moments of great happiness, especially when you were little, when your father was still alive, when I thought I was building something beautiful, something called a family. But I also told him that I had sacrificed so much of myself in the process that I no longer even remembered who Rose was before she had become Daniel's mother or Robert's widow. Clara stood up abruptly, as if she had been stung by a wasp. This is ridiculous. You cannot just go with that man. What are people going to say? A woman your age, chasing after romantic adventures like some kind of a teenager? I looked her directly in the eyes and smiled with a serenity I hadn't felt in years. Clara, my dear, after tonight, what other people think is the very last thing I could possibly care about. After all, if my own family considers me to be inferior and mediocre, what could the opinion of complete strangers possibly matter? Daniel finally found the strength to speak. Mom, if you really want to meet Michael, if you really want to travel, we could support you. Just Just don't do it out of spite. Don't ruin your entire life just to punish us. Ruin my life? I repeated, in complete disbelief. Daniel, don't you understand? This is not a decision that is being made out of spite. This is a decision for my own survival. For the first time in all these decades, someone is offering me a chance to be happy, to be valued, to be loved for who I am, and not for what I can give. I walked to the dining room window and looked outside, at the quiet street where I had lived for so many years, where I had raised my son, where I had buried so many of my own dreams. Tomorrow, I am going to call Michael, and I am going to accept his invitation. I am going to buy a plane ticket. I am going to pack a suitcase with all of my best dresses, and I am going to find out if it is still possible to be happy at 70 years old. The weeks that followed that explosive dinner were the strangest of my life. Daniel tried to call me every single day for the first week, leaving desperate, pleading messages on my answering machine. Clara, for her part, simply disappeared. She didn't call. She didn't write. She didn't make any attempt to contact me. It was as if she had decided it was easier to hate me than to face the truth of what she had done. But I didn't have time to worry about them. For the first time in years, I had something much more exciting to focus on: my conversations with Michael. Every night, at 9 o'clock sharp, my phone would ring, and for 2 or 3 hours, we would talk as if time had not passed at all. I told him about my years of working at the library, about the wedding dresses I had once dreamed of designing, about all the stories that each and every one of my neighbors had shared with me. It was strange and so wonderful to feel interesting again, to feel that someone actually valued my experiences and my memories. Rose, he said to me during one of our late-night calls, I have been thinking about you for 40 years. When I married my wife, when my own children were born, when I built my company from the ground up, there was always a part of me that wondered what would have happened if I had been brave enough to ask you to come to America with me. His words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in decades. Michael, I have thought about you many times too, especially when things were tough, when my husband was sick, when Daniel started having all of his problems. I often wondered what my own life would have been like if I had just gotten on that plane with you. Well, he replied, with that deep, rumbling laugh I remembered so perfectly. It is never too late to find out, is it? The plane ticket lay on my nightstand, real and tangible, like a promise of freedom. Departure, March 15th. Destination, Seattle, Washington. Michael had insisted on paying for the ticket, but I had refused his offer. This is my decision, my own adventure, I had told him. I want to pay for it with my own money. The money that I had saved for so many months by depriving myself of my own medicine and of decent food. Money that I would now use for something that would finally make me times happy for the first time in years. 3 days before my trip, Daniel showed up at my door. He looked terrible, gaunt, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled as if he had been sleeping in them. "Mom, please, we need to talk," he said, in a broken voice that, despite everything, still managed to break my heart. I let him in, but I kept my emotional distance. "Where is Clara?" I asked, as I made coffee in my small kitchen. "At her parents' house," he replied, sitting down heavily on one of my kitchen chairs. "She left a week ago. She says she cannot be with me if I do not have a job, if I cannot maintain the lifestyle that she believes she deserves." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "It turns out that her superior mother is not so superior when it comes to helping out financially. They told her to fend for herself." I felt a small pang of satisfaction that wasn't particularly noble, but which I couldn't help but feel. "So, What are you going to do now? I have been desperately looking for work. I have applied everywhere, Mom. Offices, restaurants, stores, construction, anything. I am willing to do anything at all. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years, a genuine, profound humility. I have also been going to therapy. I found a community center that offers free services. I am glad to hear that, Daniel, I said, and I truly meant it. That is a very big step. The therapist has helped me to understand a lot of things about myself that I never wanted to see. He has helped me to understand that I have been an emotional and financial parasite, not just with you, but with everyone who has ever tried to help me. His words sounded almost rehearsed, as if he had practiced this very speech many times in front of a mirror. And what have you learned, specifically? I asked, curious to see if there had really been a change or if this was just another one of his manipulations. Daniel took a moment to answer, nervously toying with his coffee cup. I have learned that I never learned how to be responsible for myself because you were always there to rescue me. It is not your fault, he added quickly when he saw my expression. It is mine. But the pattern was set very early on, and I never made the effort to break it. I nodded slowly. And Clara? What did you learn about your relationship with her? That what I felt for her was not love. It was an emotional dependency. I liked that she was so demanding and so critical because it gave me an excuse not to grow up, to continue being a little child who needed his mom to come and rescue him. He stopped and looked me directly in the eyes. Mom, I know that I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know that I have destroyed our relationship, but I need you to know that for the first time in my entire adult life, I am finally seeing things clearly. And what exactly do you see? I asked, carefully. I see a 70-year-old woman who has sacrificed her entire life for a son who never once appreciated it. I see a woman who worked her hands to the very bone to give me an education and opportunities that I completely wasted. I see a woman who deserves to be happy, who deserves to be valued, who deserves to finally chase her own dreams after decades of chasing only mine. His words moved me, but they also made me cautious. Daniel, I am so glad to hear that you are reflecting on all of these things. But words are easy. Real change takes time and consistent action. I know, he said, nodding vigorously. And I am not here to ask you to cancel your trip. I am not here to ask you for money or for any more help. I am here to tell you that I am going to show you, with my actions, that I can change, even if you are no longer here to see it. What do you mean by that? Daniel stood up and began to pace my small kitchen. I got a job at a cleaning company. It is night work, and the pay is very low, but it is honest, and it allows me to live in a small room that I have rented downtown. I am also taking some online classes to get a certification in accounting. I looked at him in genuine, complete surprise. When did you decide to do all of this? The night after our dinner, when I got home, and Clara started yelling at me for having ruined our financial situation. Something inside of me just snapped. I realized that I was 35 years old, and I had never been responsible for my own life, not for a single day. He sat down again and took my hands in his. Mom, I want you to go to Seattle. I want you to meet Michael, to see the ocean, to write that book you have always wanted to write. I want you to be happy, even if it means that I am no longer a part of your life. For the first time since that terrible night of the dinner, I felt like I was finally talking to my real son, not the manipulative, dependent version I had known for so many years. Daniel, you are always going to be a part of my life. You are my son, and you always will be. But I need you to understand that our relationship cannot stay the same. I understand that completely, he said, firmly. And I want you to know that I am going to work on becoming the kind of son that you can actually be proud of, even if it takes me years, even if by then it is too late to ever repair our relationship. We sat in silence for several minutes, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Daniel spoke again. Will you, will you tell me about Michael? What was he like when you were young? An involuntary smile spread across my face. He was brilliant, so ambitious, so gentle. He had a way of making me feel like I was the most interesting woman in the entire world. When we would talk, he would focus entirely on me, as if my words were the most important thing he had ever heard. Why didn't you go with him when he moved to America? Because I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of leaving everything that I knew, afraid of failing, afraid of not being good enough for him. And then I met your father, and he represented security, stability, a predictable, safe life. I paused. I do not regret choosing your father. He was a good man, and we had many beautiful moments together. But now I have a second chance to find out what would have happened if I had just been a little bit braver. Daniel nodded slowly. Do you think that Michael has really been thinking about you all of these years? Or do you think that he is just idealizing the past? Daniel's question made me think very deeply. You know, Daniel, I have asked myself that very same question every single night since Michael first contacted me. Is what he is feeling real, or are we just two old people, idealizing a youthful love? I stood up and walked to the window, watching the garden where I had planted all of those roses so many years ago. But then I realized that it doesn't really matter. What do you mean, it doesn't matter? Daniel asked, genuinely curious. It doesn't matter if what we are feeling is nostalgia or idealization or true love. What matters is that for the first time in decades, I feel completely and utterly alive. I feel valuable. I feel like a woman who deserves to be courted, to be admired, to be respected. I turned to look at him. When was the last time that I ever felt that way? When was the last time that anyone ever made me feel special just for being me? Daniel lowered his head, completely ashamed. I never made you feel that way, did I? I always just took you for granted. Something that would always be there for me, no matter how I ever treated you. Exactly. And it wasn't just you, Daniel. Your father, too. Toward the end of our marriage, he had started to see me only as the woman who cooked and cleaned and took care of him when he was sick. I had stopped being Rose and had become just his wife, and then just your mother. At that exact moment, my phone rang. It was Michael, calling at the time we had agreed upon, as he always did. I looked at Daniel, who nodded, indicating that I should answer. Hello, beautiful, Michael's voice said through the phone, and I immediately felt that familiar warmth spreading through my chest. How was your day? Interesting, I replied, smiling despite all the tension. My son is here. Daniel, would you like to say hello to Michael? Daniel froze for a moment, but then he slowly nodded. I put the phone on speaker. Michael, I would like you to meet Daniel, my son. Daniel, this is Michael. Hello, Daniel. It is a pleasure to meet you. Your mother has told me so much about you. Sir, I don't know what to say. This is all very complicated. Life is always complicated, Daniel. The important thing is how we face those complications. And from what your mother has told me, you seem to be facing yours with a newfound maturity. Daniel looked at me, completely surprised. It was clear that he had not expected Michael to be so direct, and yet so incredibly understanding at the same time. Mr. Jenkins, Daniel continued, can I ask you, what are your intentions with my mother? Michael chuckled softly. That is a very fair question. My intentions are to get to know the woman that the girl I fell in love with 40 years ago has become. My intentions are to show her beautiful places, to introduce her to my own children, to cook for her, to listen to all of her stories, and perhaps, if we both decide that we want to build a deep and meaningful friendship or something more. And and if things don't work out as you expect, Daniel asked, then we will have had a beautiful adventure. We will have finally closed a chapter that was left open for so many decades. And your mother will have had a very well-deserved vacation in the state of Washington. There is no pressure, Daniel, no unrealistic expectations. Just two older people giving themselves a chance to rediscover what joy feels like. Daniel visibly relaxed. Thank you for being so honest, sir. Please, call me Michael. And now, if you will excuse me, I would like to speak with your mother alone for just a moment. Daniel nodded and walked to the living room, giving me some privacy for my phone call. How do you feel after talking to him? I asked Michael, once we were alone. I feel good. He seems to be a young man who is going through a very important moment of growth. And that speaks very well of the way you have raised him, Rose. Children who never have to face any difficulties never learn how to be resilient. His words reassured me more than I had expected. Michael, are you sure that you want to get involved in your peaceful life with a woman who has so much family drama? Rose, my dear, we all have family drama at our age. One of my own sons got divorced last year and moved back into my house with his two small children. My daughter is having a midlife crisis and calls me, crying, every single Tuesday. And my youngest son is struggling with a video game addiction that is affecting his marriage. He laughed softly. Family drama is just a part of life. The difference is in how we handle it, and how you are handling it with clear boundaries, with firm love, and by always remembering that your children are adults who are responsible for their own decisions and their own consequences. That is something you seem to be learning to do as well. After I had hung up with Michael, Daniel and I continued talking late into the night. He told me more details about his therapy, about how he was learning to identify the behavioral patterns he had repeated for so many years without ever even realizing it. You know what was the hardest thing for me to accept in therapy? He asked me, as we drank a second cup of coffee. What? That it wasn't just that I was lazy or immature. It was that I had developed an emotional addiction to being rescued. Every time someone solved a problem for me, every time I was given money or pulled out of a tight spot, I would feel a kind of euphoric relief. It was like a drug. His words hit me hard. And how are you supposed to break that addiction? By facing the consequences of my own actions without ever seeking to be rescued. When I lost my last job, my very first instinct was to come running to you with some sad sob story. But this time, instead, I just slept in my car for 3 days until I got the cleaning job. You slept in your car? I asked, with an automatic maternal concern. Yes, and it was one of the most important experiences of my entire life. For the very first time, I truly understood what it means to not have a safety net, what it means for my own actions to have real, tangible consequences. He looked me directly in the eyes. Mom, during those 3 long nights, I thought a lot about you. I thought about all the times that you had had to choose between your own needs and mine, and how you had always chosen mine. That is what mothers do, Daniel. No, Mom. That is what mothers who have not yet learned how to set healthy boundaries do, and that is what children who have never learned how to be responsible adults do. He leaned forward. The therapist helped me to understand that by constantly rescuing me, you were unintentionally depriving me of the opportunity to ever grow up. His words hurt me, but they also freed me. For years, I had felt so guilty every single time I had even considered saying no to Daniel. Every time I had ever thought about putting my own needs first. And now I finally understood that my endless generosity had actually been a way of controlling him, of keeping him completely dependent on me. So, so what happens now? I asked softly. Now, I am going to prove, first, to myself and then to you, that I can be a responsible adult. I am going to pay my own bills. I am going to make my own decisions. I am going to face my own problems. And when you come back from Seattle, if you even decide to come back, I am going to be a son that you can finally be proud of. And and if I decide to stay in Seattle, Daniel smiled. And for the first time in years, I saw a genuine, unadulterated joy in his smile instead of just manipulation. Then I will be so happy for you. I will come and visit you whenever I can. I will call you every single week, and I will live my own life, knowing that my mother is finally living hers. The day of my departure dawned with a clear, bright sky and a gentle breeze that seemed to whisper promises of all the adventures that were to come. Daniel arrived early to take me to the airport, and for the first time in years, there was no tension at all between us. He had brought me flowers, a small, beautiful bouquet of white daisies that I knew were my favorite, and a sealed letter. "Don't open it until you are on the plane," he said, with a shy, sweet smile. "It is just something that I needed to say to you, but it is much easier for me to write it than to actually speak it." During the drive to the airport, we talked about everyday things, the weather, the news, his plans for the week. It was a normal, easy conversation between a mother and her son, something that we hadn't had in years. There were no pleas, no drama, no guilt, just a quiet, peaceful conversation between two adults who loved each other, but who finally understood the importance of healthy boundaries. "Mom," he said, when we arrived at the airport, "I want you to know that no matter whatever happens in Seattle, this has all already been worth it." "What do you mean?" "Seeing you like this, so excited, so nervous, so happy. I haven't seen you shine in this way in years." He helped me to take my suitcase out of the car, a suitcase that I had carefully packed with all of my best dresses, including a new coral pink one that I had bought especially for this very trip. At the airport, Daniel walked me all the way to the security gate. When it was finally time to say goodbye, we hugged, with an intensity that we hadn't shared since he was a little boy. "I love you, Mom," he whispered in my ear. "Have fun, fall in love, be happy. You deserve it more than anyone else in the entire world. I love you too, son. And I am so proud of the man that you are becoming." Once I was on the plane, I opened Daniel's letter with trembling hands. His handwriting, which had always been so messy, now looked more mature, more careful. "Mom," it began, "during these past few days, I have been thinking about all the times that you were a hero without me ever even noticing. When you worked double shifts just to be able to pay for my school books. When you sold your new sewing machine just to be able to buy me a bicycle. When you would pretend that you weren't hungry just so that I could eat more. When you stayed up all night taking care of me whenever I was sick. All of those countless moments of silent, unconditional love that I always just took for granted. Now, I finally understand that being a mother does not mean sacrificing yourself until you simply disappear. It means loving someone enough to teach them independence. It means being brave enough to finally let go when it is time. Thank you for finally loving me enough to let me grow up. Fly high, Mom, literally and figuratively, with all of my love and all of my respect, Daniel P.S. Michael is a very lucky man to be meeting the most extraordinary woman in the entire world. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I put the letter back in my purse. Through the plane window, I could see the clouds stretching out to infinity. And for the first time in decades, I felt that my own future was just as infinite. Michael was waiting for me at the Seattle airport with a huge bouquet of yellow roses and a smile that I recognized immediately, even though he now had more wrinkles and his hair was completely white. When he saw me, his entire face lit up with the same joy that I remembered from our college days. "Rose," he said, when we finally hugged, "you are even more beautiful than I remembered. The days that followed were like living in a beautiful dream." Michael took me to see the Pacific coast, where, for the first time in my entire life, I could see the ocean stretching out all the way to the horizon. He introduced me to his children, who welcomed me with a genuine, heartfelt warmth that moved me so deeply. His youngest daughter, Sarah, said to me, "Dad hasn't smiled like that since Mom passed away. Thank you for bringing back his joy." Michael cooked for me every single night, elaborate, delicious dinners that we would savor on his beautiful deck while we watched the sunset. He wasn't the powerful, retired engineer anymore. He was just Michael, the man who had fallen in love with a brilliant, vibrant girl 40 years ago and had never, ever forgotten her. His words went straight to my heart because they expressed exactly what I felt when I was with him. I wasn't Daniel's sacrificial mother. I wasn't a tired, old librarian. I was simply Rose, a woman with stories to tell, with dreams to finally chase, and with so much love still left to give. At the end of my month in Seattle, Michael made me a proposal that completely changed my perspective on what was still possible at 70 years old. "Rose, I don't want this to ever end. I know that this is crazy. I know that we are just getting to know each other again after so many years. But I want you to please consider moving to Seattle. Not to get married immediately, not to even live together if you don't want to, but just to give us the chance to build something beautiful together at this stage of our lives." My first instinct was to think of all the reasons why it was impossible. My house, my few friends, my quiet little life in my hometown. But then I thought of Daniel, of his beautiful letter, of his words about flying high. I thought of Clara, who had probably never truly respected me. I thought of all the years that I had lived only for others, always putting my own dreams on hold. "What if things don't work out?" I asked. "Then we will have had a beautiful, wonderful adventure." "But Rose, what if they do work out? What if, after a lifetime of putting everyone else first, you finally have the opportunity to be completely and utterly happy?" That night, I called Daniel to tell him about Michael's proposal, and his response surprised me and filled me with so much pride. "Mom, are you happy with him?" "Happier than I have been in decades. He treats me so well. He respects me. He makes me feel valuable every single day." "Then stay. Build the life that you deserve. I will be fine. In fact, I will be even better, knowing that you are finally living for yourself." 6 months later, I was packing up my most cherished belongings in my old house, getting ready to move to Seattle permanently. Daniel helped me with the entire process, demonstrating a maturity and a responsibility that filled me with so much hope for his future. "You know what is the most ironic part of all of this?" he said to me as we were packing up all the old family photos. "What?" "That by finally letting you go, I feel like I have finally gotten you back. Not as the mother who was constantly having to rescue me, but as the extraordinary woman that you always were, but whom I had never bothered to truly get to know." As I write this story, from Michael's beautiful deck, watching the Pacific Ocean and waiting for him to come back from the market where he has gone to buy all the ingredients for the dinner we will cook together tonight, I reflect on all that has changed. Daniel is successfully building his own life. He got a promotion at his job. He has moved to a better apartment, and he is now dating a woman who challenges him to be a better person instead of just enabling his dependency. Clara, he told me, has married an older man who can maintain her extravagant lifestyle, which is probably for the best for everyone. And me, I have finally learned that it is never, ever too late to be happy. I have learned that self-love is not selfishness, but the very foundation for being able to love others in a healthy and meaningful way. I have learned that a 70-year-old woman can have adventures, can fall in love, and can completely start over. Michael and I got married last month in a small, beautiful ceremony on the beach, with his children and Daniel as our only witnesses. Daniel cried throughout the entire ceremony, but they were tears of pure joy. I never thought I would get to see my mother marry for love, he told me afterward. I had always just assumed that your marriage to Dad had been for convenience and for family. Now, when I look back at that terrible, painful night when Clara humiliated me in my own home, I see it as the greatest gift I could have ever received, because it was that very humiliation that finally woke me up. It was that humiliation that finally showed me that I deserved so much more. It was that humiliation that finally gave me the courage to chase the happiness I thought I had lost forever. And you, what would you do if life gave you a second chance to be completely happy? Would you have the courage to take it, no matter what other people might think? Because believe me, it is never, ever too late to start over. If this story touched you, please let me know in the comments. Your thoughts and your own stories give me so much strength. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and share this with anyone who might need a reminder that they deserve happiness too. And be sure to watch the 2 videos I've selected for you on the end screen. I know you'll love them. Thank you for being here with me.